Once at lamplight, I realised for the first time I hadn't taken the Child at Heart perk and was nervous that I wasn't going to pass the speech check. As the last thing I wanted to do right now was go and free the slaves. I'm saving that for the Can You Beat Fallout 3 It's Abraham Lincoln video. I never thought that a random joke I made in a video about Caesar Milan of all people would end up becoming one of the most requested videos on the channel. But you asked for it, so I shall deliver, and now, exactly 17 weeks since the joke was made, I aim to figure out, can you beat Fallout 3 as Abraham Lincoln? This begs the question though, what does it mean to beat the game as Abe Lincoln? Well, a few ground rules I have set for myself are that I can never lie, you know, honest Abe and all that. I will also make sure to grab everything of Lincoln's that's in the Museum of Freedom. This is also where I will get Lincoln's repeater, which will probably be my primary weapon for this playthrough. And finally, and probably most obvious, is that I'm of course going to free all the slaves. There are a few other small rules I made, but I'll go over them when the time comes in the playthrough. So, with all that out of the way, let's begin. During creation, I try my absolute best to get some of the basic features down of Lincoln, but not being able to adjust your age for obvious story reasons means I can only get so far. For my special stats, I spread them out with a high focus on endurance and intelligence while draining luck and charisma. You would think that seeing how he was the president that I would give him a high charisma stat. But no, we are instead going to work for our high speech skill. That way, it is more impressive. As for the 1 point in luck, well, I mean, he was assassinated after all. Now it is time for Abraham Lincoln fact number 1. Did you know that Abraham Lincoln would personally test fire rifles outside of the White House? With that in mind, when it comes time to use the BB gun, I'd say it would make sense that he would test it out in the nearby railroad. After this, when it came time to choose my tag skills, I take small guns, speech, and unarmed. Why am I taking unarmed, you may ask? Well, if you don't know the answer to that, then I believe it's already time for Abraham Lincoln fact number 2. Did you know as a young man, Lincoln was quite a successful wrestler, defeated only once in roughly 300 matches? So with that knowledge, I'd say he would make for quite a deadly hand-to-hand combatant. As such, fighting my way out of the vault was a complete non-issue. Once out of the vault, as usual, I head to Megaton to see about getting supplies before setting out on my journey to the Museum of Freedom to reclaim the relics that are rightfully mine. I mostly just bought stim packs from Doc Hoff, who happened to be outside the town at the time. On this journey, just as I passed Grandma Sparkle's house, I found a trader who was selling a hunting rifle. I made sure to buy it off of him as I can use it to repair Lincoln's repeater once I get my hands on it. After a brief swim, I came across some raiders who were not able to stand up to the sheer power of the presidential punch. I ended up making a slight detour here as to get to the museum I need to go through the metro tunnels near Rivet City, so I thought I should check and see if Potomac Attire had any black suits for me to buy, as it would really complete the look once I got the hat. Sadly, they didn't have any, so it was off to the tunnels to show some raiders some justice. I'm obviously still in the early parts of the game, so other than one raider who had a sawn-off shotgun, none of them were carrying any weapons that I would consider a threat, so this meant getting up close and personal wasn't all too risky. Once I emerge from the tunnels, I am right in the middle of super mutant territory. I thought I was running straight for the Museum of History, but I took a wrong turn and instead ended up at the National Archives. For some reason, the majority of the mutants didn't follow me, so therefore, the few that did were easy enough to deal with. Despite the fact their hunting rifles can do a sizable amount of damage at my current level, they aren't all that good with them when you're right up in their face. Once I dealt with them, I corrected myself and ran straight for the Museum of History and from there to the offices to grab all of Lincoln's artifacts. Other than the hat and gun, which I planned to keep for myself, I also grabbed the Action Abe action figure, John Wilkes Booth's Wanted poster, the Civil War draft poster, Lincoln's voice, Lincoln's coin collection, and finally Lincoln's diary. There is also a Lincoln Memorial poster that spawns here, but it won't appear until after I get the Head of State quest, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I spent longer in here than I care to admit. The hat and gun, I got both of those quick enough, but everything else I just had the worst time trying to find. Not helping matters is the horde of ghouls in here that I had to try and fend off with my bare hands, as I only had 6 bullets for the repeater at the time. And yes, while it did one-shot the ghouls, there were definitely more than 6 of them. What ended up happening was because I spent so long in here, the turret defense system on the ceiling ended up actually killing the rest of the ghouls while I crawled around the floor, scavenging for pieces of historical paper. Once I collected the last trinket, I left and was now in the hunt for 44 ammo for the repeater. Seeing how it's literally right next door, I tried Underworld, but all they had was drugs and alcohol, and while beer is incredibly tempting for Northern Irish people such as myself, I decided to pass on it this time and went back to Rivet City to try my luck there. Well, as luck would have it, Flack had 22 bullets for sale, so I bought them all. I quickly realised that this wouldn't last me long at all, and therefore the only other option was Tenpenny Tower, as I remember Chief Gustavo selling them in my 32 pistol run. The only encounter on the way was a Yaogwai, as it's a scripted spawn. Usually at this level I would avoid it at all costs, but this time I've got the power of America on my side, and even with 1 point in luck, I managed to land a critical hit and as a result take it out with 2 shots. Once I pay the fine to get into Tenpenny Tower, I not only buy 37 more 44 rounds from Gustavo, but I also get another 21 from Lydia Montenegro, and to top it all off, I get the grimy pre-war business wear from Anthony Ling to really complete this presidential look. With the setup complete, it was finally time to get down to business and truly become the great emancipator. First on my list of slaves to help was Hannibal Hamlin and his friends at the Temple of the Union. All I remember about its location is that it's somewhere northeast of Minefield, so I figured I'd head there first. On the way, I got to test out the repeater on some mole rats and raiders. Shocking probably none of you, it kills most of them in a single shot. Arriving in Minefield, and I play things extra careful by out-sniping the sniper before the sniper snipes me. I also grab a mine while I'm here, as I may as well get the experience for completing that part of the Wasteland Survival Guide quest for Moira. Now heading northeast, I encountered the absolute worst Talon Company mercs I've ever seen. Not only did I somehow sneak up and insta-kill one of them, but the other one also ran in fear from a bloatfly of all things. Naturally, I finished the job, but it felt more like putting down a defenseless animal, not killing a renowned member of a mercenary company. As I continued on my path, I started thinking that something seemed off. Like I figured I should have reached the Temple of the Union by now. And then it hit me. And by it, I mean a Deathclaw. 2 of them, in fact. Yeah, turns out I went way too far northeast and ended up in their neck of the woods. Well, old Abe isn't one to back down from stressful situations, so I put the stopping part of the repeater to work and miraculously came out on top in both encounters. I am honestly in utter disbelief that this happened, but I suppose the gun really is just that good. It was pretty clear to me now that I was certainly in the wrong area, so I doubled back on myself and made sure to keep an eye out this time for the actual building, rather than just aimlessly wandering in a single direction. I also killed a few Brahmin on the way, almost as a form of revenge for Lincoln's mother. Why is that, you may ask? Well, I think it's about time for Abraham Lincoln fact number 3. Did you know in 1818 Lincoln's mother died of a milk sickness that swept across Indiana? It turned out that the milk had come from a cow that had ingested some poisonous snake root. With that in mind, I'd say it makes sense to kill any and all Brahmin that I come across. Not long after the Great Cow Slaughter of 77, I arrive at the temple and of course agree to help the slaves with their 2 problems. First off, I need to go back to the Museum of History and get that memorial poster I mentioned earlier, as now it has spawned in. And then after that, I head to the Lincoln Memorial and see about clearing out any super mutants there. Well, when I arrive at the memorial, it turns out the mutants are dead and none other than slavers have moved in. There is only one way to deal with this issue, and it involves 4 scores worth of bullets. Truth be told, these slavers were clearly not ready for Lincoln himself to descend from heaven and unleash his righteous fury upon them, as they all get taken down within seconds. Before I leave, I do get taken aback a bit as I notice the same image I used in the thumbnail and some of the signs around the memorial. Once Hannibal and the slaves thank me and move into the memorial, I sell him all of Lincoln's trinkets I picked up earlier, except for the hat and gun, of course. I don't get as many caps as I would have thought from this, but still, it's better than nothing. Regardless, I then take the money and begin cycling around all the traders again and waiting for them to restock until I spend all of my caps and get a grand total of 291 rounds for the repeater. You may think this is overkill, but considering the next 2 areas I plan to liberate, I think it's more than necessary. Well, let's change that to 3 areas, as while I was on my way to Paradise Falls, I ended up strolling into Arafu, and they appear to be suffering from a vampire problem. Now, as we all know, it is fairly common knowledge that good old Abraham was known for engaging in a spot of vampire killing from time to time. They wouldn't have made a movie about it otherwise. So, to that end, I begin making my way to the vampire's home to have a chat with them. Despite being renowned hunters of the night, these so-called vampires aren't all that tough, and they all go down within a few shots to the head. Just like a normal human would. Well, no time to think about that as I level up and max out my small gun skill and take the toughness perk because this suit and hat combo probably isn't going to hold up against gunshots for much longer. While I'm here, I also rescue this young boy named Ian and then I actually begin making my way to Paradise Falls as it should only be a short jog up the road. On the way, I decide to hunt down a nearby group of super mutants, and something that I completely forgot about is that some mutants take prisoners. Now, they are probably planning to eat him, but for all I know they could be planning to use him as a slave, so that's good enough for me to wipe them all off the face of the earth. At last, I arrive at Paradise Falls and I get a pretty clear answer from their doorman that they are indeed slavers, so with that tidbit of knowledge, it is time for Abe to let her rip. Gruus and 40 aren't too much trouble to deal with, even if they do inflict a decent amount of damage. Once I arrive in the main compound, things begin to get a little more hectic as a larger group of slavers start to charge me. Thing is, if they don't have an actual unique name, and are in fact just called Slaver, then I have nothing to worry about as I will tend to die in 2 body shots or a single headshot if I'm accurate enough. I do count myself incredibly lucky that I was able to shoot this missile launcher out of this slaver's hands before he turned me into nothing but a red puddle and a hat. Speaking of luck, despite her namesake, Clover was in fact not lucky by even the faintest degree. She may have been a slave, but she chose her side. It's not Lincoln's fault, it was the wrong one. Emir was an absolute joke, which I think is pretty clear from this footage of me doing the slowest reload imaginable right in his face before turning his head into a bowling ball. A couple of other named as well as nameless slavers tried to stop me, but there ain't no brakes on the freedom train, and as such they all got destroyed in the process. When it came down to it at the end, it was just me and Eulogy Jones himself. He too was in just a suit with a gun that fired 44 rounds, almost like we are two sides of the same coin. Well, unlike Eulogy Jones, Lincoln literally has his face on a coin, so that makes me the victor by default. It also doesn't hurt that his head exploded in the process. Best of all, he had far more ammo than I would have thought, 24 rounds in total, so in other words, I essentially just completely refilled any of the ammo that I spent here, so that's pretty good. At the end of the day, we are here for the slaves, not ammo, so I go back outside and make sure to free every last one of them. I even get a nice 900 XP reward for saving the little lamplight kids, which levels me up, and now it's time to start funneling my points into repair as the condition of the repeater is starting to get below half, and I want to keep it in the best condition as possible. With Paradise Falls cleared, the capital wasteland is mostly clear of its slaver problem. However, there is an area to the north where there's still plenty of slaves to be free. You probably all saw this coming a mile away, but it's off to the pit to see about ending slavery once and for all. Believe it or not, I ended up rescuing another captive from a second group of super mutants on my way north. Maybe I am secretly being pulled towards any and all prisoners. Continuing on further, I save Warner from a band of raiders from Pittsburgh and become far too distracted by his green skin to pay attention to what he's saying. The gist of it is he wants me to steal a slave disguise and sneak into the pit and free his friends. Now, that's all well and good, but a true man faces these problems head on, so to that end, every single raider or slaver from here to the entrance to the pit meets a bloody end at the hands of President Lincoln. I even managed to shoot this one sniper right out of the air while he was no doubt practicing for his no-scope montage. Now, unlike say Fallout 4's Nuka World DLC however, I can't just gun my way through all the slavers and be in and out of here in about 20 minutes, as once I make it into the main area, I am beaten with police batons and all of my stuff is stolen. I would be a lot more distraught about this whole situation as I did take my main method of attack, but you see, I have been putting points into the Iron Fist perk, so disarming me is honestly more dangerous than if they'd actually left me with some sort of melee weapon. First things first, I need to blend in, so I head off to the steel mill to begin collecting, well, steel. This is also where you first encounter the new enemy of this DLC, the Trogs. The slaves and slavers alike all hype up these creatures and make you think that they're going to be this really difficult enemy to fight, but the truth is, these things are honestly less threatening than your average feral ghoul. The little ones all go down in about a single punch. The bigger ones don't fare much better and can usually not survive 2 or 3 hits. What I am basically trying to say here is that I grab all 10 pieces of steel with absolutely no hassle, I make my way back to Medea and get informed it's now time to fight in the arena. Well, I did mention earlier how Lincoln in his younger years was a very successful wrestler, so the chance to show off his skill in the arena is certainly appreciated. My first match is against 2 guys with assault rifles, both of which go down in 2 punches each, so no trouble here. The second fight has me going against the Bear brothers. One has a flamer and the other a Deathclaw gauntlet. The issue isn't so much the damage these two can deal, as the one with the flamer barely hurts me at all while I focus on the one with the claw. The real issue is the high amount of radiation that is inside the arena and is essentially giving the fight a time limit of sorts. All in all though, they still can't stand up to my punching prowess and the brothers meet their end before I get too badly irradiated. The third and final fight is honestly nothing to write home about. My opponent has a new gun unique to the DLC, but it doesn't mean a whole lot whenever I manage to disarm him and then clock him in the face a few times and he goes down. With the incredibly lackluster arena now finished, I am giving back all of my items, so I suit up immediately, grab my gun, and march my way over to Haven to meet Asher, the leader of the slaves. Just like before, there is no room for diplomacy, and so I immediately enter Vats and fire off 2 shots into Asher's skull, killing him instantly before he even has a chance to realise what has just happened. This of course sets the rest of the slavers on high alert and they all begin to converge in my position. Well, unlucky for them, the president has more than enough bullets to go around and one by one they all go down to the sheer power that is Abraham Lincoln. I also grab baby Marie while I'm here so that the slaves can find a cure for whatever's going on here. It's probably the green skin thing. My onslaught of righteousness continues as I cut a path through any and all slavers in my way until I get outside where I am joined by the now freed slaves who also join the fight to help me put an end to slavery once and for all. From here, I meet back up with Werner, and he has me travel through the underground tunnels so that I can disable the floodlights in the part of town where the slavers live, so that the Trogs will overrun the area and essentially finish off any slavers that I may have missed. This isn't a very long or exciting mission, but I do get to test my mettle against a small army of Trogs. They did not survive the encounter. With the floodlights off and the slaves freed, I finish the Pit DLC and can now return to the capital wasteland to free the last few slaves on my radar before wrapping things up. With that in mind, it's back to Tenpenny Tower first to not only buy ammo from Gustavo, as after the slaver purge of Pittsburgh I am running low on bullets, but also because after talking with May Wong in Rivet City, we learned that she used to be a slave of Alistair Tenpenny. So, with Tenpenny now headless and part of the sidewalk, I head north to free the slaves at Evergreen Mills. Considering these raiders are nowhere near as strong as the ones I just fought in the pit, I won't waste your time by explaining how they never stood a chance. For what it's worth, after rescuing the slaves here, I also released the Behemoth. Now, he may not be human, but he was still a slave to these raiders, and therefore I took pity on him and let him free to roam the wastes. He wasn't exactly thankful for the gesture, but what can you do? With that out of the way, there's only one more group of people that I can think of that I would consider slaves, and that's the residents of Vault 112 stuck inside Tranquility Lane. So I decided to make my way there, as it's just up the road from Evergreen Mills anyway, and enter the simulation and set events into motion by letting the Chinese invade and freeing everyone from this virtual nightmare. From here, that's pretty much the main purpose of this run over, as all the other slaves have been freed from captivity, meaning all that's left is the main story. Seeing how Lincoln's repeater is an absolutely devastating weapon that can easily get you through the entirety of the game, I don't think there'd be much point in me going over the rest of the main story in detail like I usually would in one of these runs. That's not to say that I didn't do it though. I still rescued Dad, fixed up Project Purity, met the Brotherhood, travelled to Lamplight and actually got in without a speech check for a change, ventured through Vault 87, rescued Fox, destroyed Raven Rock, escorted Liberty Prime, killed Autumn, and then sacrificed myself for the good of the Wasteland to start the Purifier. Yes, I did all of that so I could officially say, yes, you can indeed beat Fallout 3 as Abraham Lincoln. This run was an absolute blast to record. I love the wackier ones like this a lot, and it was also super refreshing for the main objective to not be completing the main story again for once. Also, going to the pit and doing those other side quests was a nice change of pace. I really hope this video lived up to the 17 weeks worth of hype I accidentally built up for it. Regardless, that's going to end this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like, and if you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe to have one of these videos out every week. My name's Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.